I'm Barbara Batson, Exhibitions Coordinator at the Library of Virginia, and I'm in our current exhibition, Mapping the Commonwealth, 1816 to 1826. This exhibition looks at manuscript maps that were created by individual surveyors, who then sent the map to the principal surveyor in Richmond. That would have been John Wood, and then after his death in 1822, Herman Boyer. So Boyer then had the task of taking all these maps, 100 and some odd, putting them all together into one large manuscript map that he could then shop to engravers in Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington. The final product was a large 44 square foot map. That's a really big map. It hangs very nicely on a wall. But how did they get from a manuscript map to this lovely piece of art? Well, it is a process. Boyer solicited bids from a number of engravers, as I said, in Philadelphia, Washington, and Baltimore, and all the bids that he received were pretty much in line with one another. They varied from about $4,000 to $6,000 and suggested that it would take 18 months to 2 years, except for one engraver, and that was Henry Tanner of Philadelphia. Henry Tanner suggested that it would be $5,000 to engrave and print the plates, and he said that it would take about a year. Well, he got the contract. His brother Benjamin had also bid on the contract, but he said it would take anywhere from 18 to 24 months. But when Henry Tanner got the contract, he actually employed his brother because Benjamin was skilled in doing pictorial vignettes. He had done a couple of the vignettes for the John Mellish 1823 map of Pennsylvania. And so he also did the two pictorial elements that you see on the Virginia map of 1826, the view of Richmond, and also the perspective view of the University of Virginia. We don't know who did the view of Richmond, but we do know that the perspective view of UVA was based on a drawing by Inion Williams, who was another surveyor and an artist and a Quaker. But how do you take a manuscript map and make it into a copperplate engraving? It's a 9-sheet map, which means that there are 9 copper plates, and each one printed one particular sheet that was then put together. The plate was heated, and a very thin coat of beeswax or a white wax was spread over the copper plate. When the plate cooled, the engraver would take the manuscript map, flip it over, rub hard to transfer the graphite or pencil lines into the wax, and then removing the paper, he would use a stylus or dry point needle and very carefully follow the lines of the contours that he saw in the wax. Then taking his burin, he would actually cut through and pull up the copper. Once that was all completed, the engraver's job was pretty much done. Now it was time for the inker. He would take his hand and rub the ink all into the incised lines, making sure that the ink went into every line, and then would have to wipe the copper plate clean. Then, taking dampened paper, they would flip that over onto the copper plate, and there would be another piece of paper. They would roll the whole thing into a press so that when you pull it, you see what had been a reversed image is now a correct image. But it wasn't finished. You had to let the print dry for 14 to 20 days. If it was going to be colored, that had to be colored, and that had to dry. And then you had to trim each sheet, glue that onto cotton or a linen backing so that you could assemble a 9-sheet map. Still, would you believe, they actually made the 1-year contract. 1 year after getting the contract, Henry Tanner presented the finished map to Herman Boyer, who had remained in Philadelphia to oversee the project. And Boyer showed that to the governor, who said, "Thumbs up, it's a good map, away we go." A number of them were for sale as a wall map. They would have gone into government offices or land offices and county offices. If you wanted a map but you didn't want to hang it on the wall, you could also buy it, dissect it, and then folded and then placed into something like a little binder. If you've ever folded out a map and tried to refold it, you can imagine this 44 square foot map. I know, we've tried. It's quite a process. But if you look at this map as I do now, knowing what I know, think of all the men who tromped through the woods, splashed through all the swamps, made their surveys, shipped them back to Richmond. Think about the principal surveyor who had to take all these manuscript maps, mush them into one large manuscript map, and then think of all the engravers who were involved in creating this map, which really is a work of art. The exhibition remains up through June 7th, 2025, and I hope that you'll come and visit Mapping the Commonwealth, 1816-1826.